Welcome to Syndicated Nightmares, where each week we take a deep dive into an episode of Freddy's Nightmares based on the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. Today, hosts Dave and Michelle are covering episode 13, Deadline, which aired January 27th, 1989, written by Jill Donner and directed by Michael Lang.
Great.
So, you recently watched this episode, right?
Yes. Well, I watched it once a month ago, and then I watched it again this morning to refresh it in my mind.
I should have done that. I didn't. I watched it last month, and I don't know if I would be able to sit through it again. So I'll give the synopsis. A washed-up newspaper editor is given a story of a lifetime, but finds out the paper tells the future and sees an article about him committing suicide. So in the synopsis, they call him a washed-up newspaper editor, but he's in high school.
Right, and he's not an editor.
No.
And also, he's not, it said he's reading about the future. Uh-huh. But that's not what happens.
Yeah, it says the paper tells the future. So, yeah, that's not a very good synopsis because that's not really the episode at all.
Right.
Will you tell us what really happened in the episode?
I'll try. It's a little bit of a mess, but I guess if I were going to give a brief synopsis to start out with, it's a high school student who's got an internship at the local paper and is writing obituaries, and his dreams make him part of the obituaries, and he's experiencing the deaths. I guess that's more what happens in that part of the episode.
Yeah. I found it funny that he had to write the obituaries himself because my sister recently had to write the obituary for my dad in May, and she had to write all of it. And when my grandpa died a few years ago, we had to write it. So I'm pretty confident that every single obituary is written by the family, and the paper just copy pastes it into whatever. They may do some formatting.
I didn't know that the families wrote obituaries. And it seems that the way they're describing obituary writing, it sounds like they're making it more complicated than it is. It seems like if someone were hired to write obituaries, it's a pretty straightforward task.
Yeah, but he was kind of told to get creative with it and to make it interesting, and I don't think anybody reads obituaries for entertainment.
Right. Yeah. Obituaries it's pretty much just the facts, like when they died, a sentence or two about their lives and who they're survived by, and any funeral information.
So the name of the newspaper is Springwood Star-Times.
Of course it is.
What do you remember from how it started?
So honestly, this episode was a bit of a mess. Usually when you ask me if I like the episode, I try to be like, well, it wasn't one of the better ones, but it had X, Y, and Z. And this is sort of the first one where it's just no, this wasn't very good.
I liked the beginning of it. The first half of it, but when we get to the second half, which we'll talk about, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, the first one at least had a story you could follow. But yeah, it starts out with this. So our main character's name is Peter, and he's driving in a car, and you see sort of women's hands coming out and caressing him and grabbing the wheel, and then all of a sudden it goes off a cliff, but it's not him anymore, it's some random blonde guy. And then he wakes up at the newspaper, and apparently that's his dream was of a guy who really died, this blonde guy driving this nice car. So that's how it sort of establishes that he's having dreams about the people whose obituaries he's writing.
And then his friends come in, right? His girlfriend comes in, and I don't remember the significance of them coming in, really. Or I think they were going to a party, or they wanted him to, but he couldn't because he was stuck working third shift writing obituaries.
Yes. Although when I first watched it, I thought there were other interns, but I guess they're not connected to the newspaper at all.
Well, is he an intern? Because the boss kind of rides him pretty hard for being the owner's son. The guy who owns the newspaper. Peter is his son.
Maybe it's just he says it's a summer job, so maybe, I guess maybe he's just a summer employee.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was on a break from school.
My summer job writing obituaries.
Exactly.
Most people get a summer job at the pool, but okay.
Right.
I was stuck writing obituaries. I have in my notes that at the beginning of the episode that they had it in their budget to crash a car and then make it explode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, like, all right, Freddy's Nightmares, way to get some budget money.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, it was a nice way to open the episode. It was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
And the hands coming out and grabbing him while he's driving sort of reminded me of the Dan sequence in Nightmare 5 when he's driving the truck and gets sort of strapped in by numerous seatbelts.
I was reminded of New Nightmare when Chase is driving back to meet Heather and Dylan, and he falls asleep at the wheel and he's singing Losing My Religion. And Freddy's glove comes out of the seat, and this didn't really happen in the episode. But yeah, I wasn't thinking Nightmare 5 at all. I was thinking New Nightmare. But I can see where Nightmare 5 fits into that as well.
Yeah, I guess something that I did like about this episode is they work in talking about Freddy at the newspaper, and he looks at it. I mean, it has no bearing on anything else that happens in the episode, but he looks up Freddy on his work computer, and they say that Freddy is, I think they say he disappeared, or he's believed to be dead, I guess, because the people who killed him hid the body, so to the general public, Freddy just sort of disappeared.
I wrote in my notes that, does Springwood care about other time zones? Because in the background of their newspaper station, they had like 6 clocks, and it was all the different time zones. So it told you what time it was in California and in London, and I was like, wow, for a small newspaper, do they really care what time it is in London?
I noticed that too, because there's a line where she says like the deadline is 2 a.m. So I was keeping an eye on the clock to see, but then I realized it's not necessarily time in Springwood, because there are all these different time zones. Yeah,
that's true. So his girlfriend invites him to this party, and he says no because he has to write obituaries, and she kind of like storms out of there as if she thinks that he cares more about writing than he does her.
Yeah, she's a little, I mean, she's supposed to be 16, but she's a little possessive.
Yeah, even for 16.
Yeah, and there's a scene later where he's like telling her about the nightmares, and she's like, you're just acting crazy so you can get out of this job and leave Springwood. Which doesn't really make sense, like, as a strategy.
And then he also had to write the obituaries in DOS.
Oh, yeah.
So kind of like in Nightmare 3 when Neil is researching Hypnosil, he's in like this DOS program. And so now here we have Peter writing obits, and he's in a DOS program. And I just couldn't imagine. Like when I was a little kid, like really, really little, I had to write in DOS, and I probably wouldn't be able to save my life now.
I'm trying to think of, I remember using like WordPerfect, but that was probably like 92, 93?
Yeah, there was WordPerfect, and then it went to Microsoft Works. And I love Microsoft Works. Whatever they did for Microsoft Word, they messed it up. They made it way too complicated.
Oh, I like Word.
In New Nightmare, Wes Craven is writing this script in DOS as well.
Was it? Or was it like a screenwriting software?
I always thought that it was DOS. I didn't... Was there a screenwriting software back in 92, 93?
Oh, that's a good question. There must have been.
I mean, I'm sure there was for, like, big-time Hollywood people, but it's not like how everyone has access to Final Draft, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I just always assumed that he was writing in DOS, and that was just what I took it as, you know? Okay,
anyway.
So back to the obits in DOS.
So his next dream after the car crash is about like the town doctor who died, and I guess he died of a heart attack. And it's so in his dream there's a beautiful nurse that says something along the lines of, you ripped my heart out, now I'm gonna rip your heart out. So first it's our main character Peter on the table, and he's experiencing this nurse ripping his heart out because that's how the doctor died. So Peter's all freaked out, and this is just a weird logic leap, but he's talking to his girlfriend about it, and he says, if I hadn't woken up and written the doctor into the obituary instead of myself, I could have been killed, which doesn't seem to make any sense.
No,
I mean, it seems sort of logical that if you're writing obituaries, it's not that absurd that you would dream about them if you fell asleep while you were writing them, and he's sort of reading a whole lot into this.
I think it was a little too soon in the plot for him to figure out what was going on. You know, like, oh, I'm dreaming about these obituaries, and if I dream it, then it's coming true, but it already did come true. He's dreaming about what happened to the person he's writing the obituary on, and then he is dreaming of himself in the place of that person, and then it turns out he would die in the same way that person did. Is that what's going on?
That he thinks it's going to cause him to die that way?
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's the part of the episode that I didn't understand. Like, what was going on with these obituaries and these dreams? Like, why were they affecting him? And I don't know. I was just like, I don't understand this episode.
Yeah, it's really strange. And then the next dream, it's about kidnappers, and they kidnap a bank president and cut a tattoo off his arm, which is weird because they don't kill him. They just cut his tattoo off. But then I thought it was strange because the first two deaths, it's sort of like the real way the person died, but with beautiful women worked in. Because in the first car death, there's the women's hands coming out, and then there's the nurse in the second one, and then they just drop it, and like moving forward, the beautiful women isn't a thing anymore.
I don't have much to add to it because I was just so confused the entire time I was watching this episode. I think later on, when we talk about the second part, I wrote, wait, who are all these people?
Right. I had to, when the girls showed up in the second half, I had to rewind and be like, were they the ones in that scene at the beginning?
I'm sorry, Jill Donner. Who wrote this episode, I just don't understand what you were trying to do with this episode. There's another dream sequence that he has where he and his girlfriend are like walking around. I don't know if it's a mall or somewhere, but it's somewhere with like multiple levels, and he's like going to fall off the top level and like fall to his death, right?
Before that, he's writing an obituary about some successful real estate guy a real estate millionaire is what they call him, who I guess he killed himself by jumping out a window. But first he has this dream where he's on like a giant Monopoly board being chased by death. Yeah, going through this bankruptcy on this giant game board, which leads him to this window, and he's going to fall out the window, and then suddenly the girlfriend shows up and pulls him back in, and he's not in this nightmare anymore. And then, he's just, at this point, he's sort of going crazy, and he's like, I need to get out of here. And even his coworkers are telling him, you're going crazy, take some time off. And they go to the elevator. He walks to the elevator with his girlfriend, and then at the last second, he's like, I forgot something. Let me run back and I'll meet you downstairs. And she takes the elevator down, and he goes into the stairwell. And then for some reason, he plummets down the middle of the stairwell and dies.
Yeah, was he trying to avoid things that he thought was going to end up causing his death? Like, he didn't go into the elevator on purpose because he thought like the elevator was going to fall?
The girlfriend makes some comment about, we're going to be late for the movie unless this elevator plummets. Which I guess you won't be seeing a movie at all if the elevator plummets.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think that's the reason? Because she spooked him that the elevator was going to...
Yeah, I was under the impression that the dream that he had before his girlfriend woke him up, that's how he thought that he was going to die. So he was just avoiding everything that would make him plummet to his death.
Okay.
And so you're like, I'm not getting in that elevator. I'll just take the stairs. Mm-hmm. And then he trips anyway and then falls down the center of the staircase, the stairwell. Probably snaps his neck or whatever, but he definitely dies.
Yeah. And
then that's just the end of it.
Right.
Who's going to write his obituary?
Oh, good point. That would have been cool because we cut to Freddy after that. Freddy's like in a beach chair, but it would have made more sense if it were Freddy typing Peter's obituary.
That would have been awesome if it was, Freddy behind the computer. He would have to take his glove off, though, in order to type.
Oh, good point.
Unless he just typed one hand, yeah.
Or Freddy reading a newspaper that has the obituary in it, maybe.
That would have been cool. And then he could, like, take his razor and, like, cut out the obituary. That would have been cool.
Oh, yeah. For his scrapbook.
For his I can't see Freddy in his boiler room scrapbooking.
No, probably not.
Yeah, if they ever reboot Freddy's Nightmares, they need to call us because we have some good storylines here.
Right, because at a beach chair, there's nothing in this episode has anything to do with like vacationing or going to the beach. It doesn't. They needed to tie that in a little better.
Yeah, it felt like, especially during the last half of this episode, that they just had like a big bulletin board of ideas, and they didn't know what to do with all of these ideas, so they just collected all of them together and said, just use all of these. And Jill Donner just went on her merry way and wrote this script with everybody's ideas, and no idea is a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to summarize the second half, because it's a bit of a mess.
It is a mess. Okay, so the friends from the beginning, the girlfriend and her two friends, are on campus, right? And they're talking, and then somehow there's like a fiery crash. Is that what happens?
I think, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I think it opens with the headline. I wrote it down: co-ed students die in fiery car crash.
Okay. That's
and it's got the two. So Emily was the girlfriend for the first half, and she's got this friend Star. So Emily and Star are the two who died in the car crash. Or I'm sorry, Annie. Annie is the girlfriend from the first half. Annie and Star died in the car crash. Emily is the one who's still with us. So Emily wakes up at home, and she is played by Paige Hanna, who is Daryl Hannah's sister.
Oh, cool. She's in Creepshow 2 as well. In the Blob segment. Yeah, the one where they go swimming on the raft, and that blob thing is trying to eat them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the best segment of that movie. Yeah. And, so Emily goes downstairs, and her parents are there, and so basically it starts out normal that she's sort of, even though this car crash that happened comes out of nowhere, but she's sort of, sitting there depressed with her parents in the aftermath of her friend's death. And they have her taking pills so that she's not so upset. But so she takes the pills, and then she's at a party with her friends. So, like, after I watched this episode the first time, and I was talking to my boyfriend about it afterwards, he didn't watch it with me, and he's like, what happened? And I was like, well, there's this girl, and her friends died in a car crash, and sometimes they're dead, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes she's dead, and sometimes she's not. And there's this guy she likes, and sometimes he's nice, and sometimes he's like death himself. And, yeah.
Who is he? Who is he supposed to be?
I don't know.
They didn't explain him at all. Yeah, and I think this is the point where I wrote in my notes, wait, who are all these people? And then I put my pen down, and I just gave up.
Right. I mean, they started out by establishing her friends died in a car crash, but then there are all these scenes of her hanging out with those two friends. And she's got this guy that she likes who's got a slicked back ponytail, and keeps having, she's in a room with him with candles and red lingerie.
But we were never told who he is, why she likes him, where they met, what his deal is. He's just there.
We know he's older, like they're in high school, and he's apparently at least older than high school.
Yeah, he's definitely at least in college.
Annie, the girlfriend from the first half, keeps referencing her boyfriend that died. So that's sort of the connection to the first half of the episode. The three girls are having a slumber party talking about, this guy with the ponytail. I sort of like that part. They lie back in the sleeping bags, and then Freddy pops up, and he's like part of the slumber party.
Yeah, that was like the only cool part about the second half of the episode.
I mean, thematically, I guess the thing they were trying to tap into was that the sort of growing up, and when you're really little, it's just your family, and then you grow up, and then your friends are important to you. And then you start dating someone. And so it's sort of that, I guess it sort of plays with that tension of like, who's most important in your life, your friends, your family, or your significant other. And sort of.
It just did not come across at all.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jill Donner.
Yeah. We keep experiencing the car crash. And at one point Emily goes home, and apparently she's her parents can't see her because she's dead because she killed herself because she was so upset about her friends dying. But then a scene or two later, she's getting ready to go out with this guy, and her dad comes in, and they have a whole conversation.
Is that guy supposed to represent death?
The ponytail guy? I guess so. Because there's a scene towards the end where he's treating her like a dead body, like she's on a slab in the morgue, and then there's a funeral scene. Apparently, like, she was supposed to die in the crash and didn't, but they don't... Like, we never find out what caused the crash. They just say it was an accident. And maybe she was supposed to be in the car with her friends and went out with a guy instead, but it's not...
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
They don't really make that clear, and it's... Plus, like, if she had been with them, like, would she have stopped the crash, or would it just mean she died too?
Well, she probably would have died too.
Yeah.
Unless maybe the ponytail guy is the guy who was the cause of the crash. Maybe they ran into him, and that's why she sees him. Maybe she was in the crash, and, like, this is her hallucinating, like, you know how you see your life flash before your eyes before you die? Yeah, maybe this is what she's dreaming the rest of her life would be about, which...
This half really needed a rewrite. And Paige Hannah, she's, like, tall and beautiful like her sister, but doesn't really have the same charisma. She's just sort of sleepwalking through this episode.
Yeah, maybe that's what the director told her to do.
True, yeah.
Who knows? Because, like, we don't know anything about her character. We have no idea what state of mind she's in. Just nothing. So... do you have anything else to say about this episode? Because I have nothing. I completely just checked out. So
yeah.
Should I even bother asking how you felt about this episode?
Yeah. Well, I can say there were a couple Freddy reference things that I liked, but yeah, unfortunately, I think for the first time since we started doing this podcast, I have to say, just with a flat out, I did not like this episode.
Yeah. That's how I feel. Like, at the beginning of this episode, it had a lot of promise to it, and I thought that it was going to be good. But it went downhill very, very fast to the point to where, like, there's been a few episodes where I had to force myself to get through it to pay attention. But this, I was just like, I just completely checked out of it, and like, but that really wasn't even the reason why it was confusing. Even if I was paying attention, I still wouldn't have had any idea what the heck was going on.
Well, one more thing. It does end with her waking up at the breakfast table with her parents again, like the first scene she was in. So
there is like a bookend to it.
Yeah. That it's not a case of she was in the accident and she died in the accident. It's more like there is no explanation. She's just...
We have some time to kill, so... I was thinking of a question that I don't think it's ever been discussed before, this part of Elm Street or this probability of Elm Street. So I want to get your 2 cents on it. So I've been making dioramas, and which got me to think about it. There are Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers. These all these little Lego men that are built in their image. And I thought, how cool would it be if there was a Lego movie with all the horror monsters? You know how they did one with Batman, and they're they have 2 just generic Lego movies. What if they did it with like a Freddy versus Jason or a Freddy versus everybody, and they used Legos and it was a Lego action movie?
I would love that. Yeah, I don't know if the horror. I don't know if it could be made scary, but with all like the monsters like fighting each other and putting each other through hell and like all the different set pieces you could do, I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about that. I was like, oh, that would be an interesting topic just to discuss. Like, how would you be able to do that, and what kind of storyline would you have? And you brought up that it wouldn't necessarily be scary, but it would, they could kind of make it a satire or a farce. Storyline to it.
That would be really fun.
So if they do it, hopefully we get credit for it, since I don't know if that's ever been proposed. Well, I think New Line and Platinum Dunes or whoever owns Friday the 13th right now, and whoever owns Halloween, like, they would all have to get together and agree, like, yeah, you can use our copyrighted material, Lego, like, knock yourself out. So that it probably wouldn't happen for many reasons, but that being probably the main one.
Yeah. I feel like they could get Freddy versus Jason, since it was
at one point.
It was Warner Brothers that. Well, hopefully now that the new Halloween was a smash hit, hopefully they'll make more Jason movies.
Yeah. Do you think they'll make Nightmare movies?
I'm sort of torn about whether I even want them to.
Okay, I think you and I are in the same boat. I don't want them to make any more Nightmare movies. If they're going to do the route where they're just going to ignore all the other sequels and, like, bring Nancy back and all that. Like, I don't want that. Like, Nancy is dead. She died for a reason, and we just need to come to terms with that. And, like, I think if they do another movie, it should be Alice focused, because she's the only survivor, really. Well, you have Maggie and Tracy. They should just all team up. Yeah, but yeah, right. I don't think they should bring Nancy back. I don't like what they did with Halloween, erasing all the other sequels just so, they could have this Jamie Lee Curtis one that they're doing. So I don't want them to do that with Nightmare on Elm Street. But who knows? Robert Englund said that he would play Freddy again. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if they did another remake with somebody else, like, I'd go see it, but I would just... I don't know. I'd think of it similar to the 2010 remake, where like it was fine as a standalone movie, but I don't really feel like it's part of the series. But if Robert Englund was in it, I would be excited about it, but also sort of taking it with a grain of salt. That just because Freddy's back doesn't mean it's going to be as good as the existing movies that I love so much.
Yeah, and if they did a prequel Nightmare on Elm Street and Robert Englund wasn't Freddy, I would be okay with that. But I think that if they do another Nightmare on Elm Street, like, to me, Freddy is Robert Englund, and he always will be. And that's just that. People can try to be Freddy and Robert's image and everything, but yeah, I want Robert Englund, and that's it.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Yeah. So my cat is in the room right now, and he's, like, headbutting everything, so I'm, like, holding down my laptop and all my recording devices, and he's just he's just going nuts. So okay.
That's so cute.
Oh yeah. So do you have anything for next week?
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please join us next time when we talk about Season 1, Episode 14, Black Tickets, in which Freddy teaches Brad Pitt the facts of life.